Hi, my name is Thelma Scott. Lived in Emory Grove all of my life. My great-grandmother lived here over 100 years ago. She died at the age of 103, and she died in 1954. So, you know, my family has been in this community for a long, long time. I'm a member of the church. I work with the Tots Choir. I'm a member of the senior choir. I've been on the not the ushers board, but I have been on the United Methodist women for over 20-some years. And so I work with the church a lot.
Okay, good, thank you. Janet?
Well, I'm Janet Dorsey, and I'm a longtime member of this church as a child, going to Sunday school, and as a teenager, that's when I began service to the church. I have a little bit of a musical ability. I can't read music, but once I hear a song, I can play it. I can sing a little bit, but I have been a member of this church. I'm 83 years old now, so, and my grandmother was a member of this church long before I was even thought of. And being a member of this church, I have played for just about the piano, just about every choir that was at the time in this church. Not that I was the primary piano player or whatever that needed me to do, but I used to assist a lot of the different choirs and help to create a couple of them. Like the Women's Mass Choir, I played for them. A lot of the church members who passed, I played for their funerals, because during that time, some couldn't afford to pay the $35 I think was charging the musician at that time to play. And then sometimes who the musician was didn't have a day off or could take a day off to provide the music. But I have accompanied a lot of funerals at this church. And since I've been back home, I moved away in 1972, but I still came to church for church when we couldn't get up here. I moved to Delphi, but I'm back up here since '92 in Montgomery Village. And then I still playing for the Women's Mass Choir, the Men's Choir, and the church choir when they needed a pianist. But I don't know a whole lot more I could tell you about the church.
What I'd like to know, I know that the community looked very different when you were growing up. Can you describe the lay of the land? What was here?
Well, we had the church. We had about 100 homes, very close together. We had some we would call around the pike, and that was 124. And then we had right in the next section, off of Emory Grove Road, we call it off Emory Grove Road, and this was Emory Grove Road. And then we had some a little bit further down Emory Grove Road, we would call Plattan. So we had about 100 of them on the hill and around the corner and down the field of all houses. And we had cornfields, and we had cows. We had chicken. Everybody had a little farm. Everybody, we lived off the ground in Emory Grove because everybody had the fruit trees, the apple trees, the grapes. All of that was plentiful. And we was able to go out and pick strawberries and whatever. And when it was time to, this day and time, you got to buy them. We thought it was crazy to have to buy them. And we used to go out the house and just pick an apple off the tree or a pear, and we would play house in the woods. So, you know, that was our food, to go in the woods and get the fruit, and we would play house. So everyone was caring to one another. We never locked the doors, because if anyone came to Emory Grove, we knew them, because it was a family community, predominant black family community. And the only thing we really have now of Emory Grove is the church. A lot of our members, older members, have died out. And when air renewal came through, they were scattered all over the place. When air renewal came through, they say primarily they would be fixing the water, the sewers, and the roads, and it didn't work that way. What they did, it was full blown, and every new came in, and people were scattered all over the place.
I'm going to ask you more about that in a little bit. Let me just back up to what the community like. You had stores.
We had stores. Roy Tyler had a store called a Little Market, and that was in 1947 when he built his store. We had a couple of tablets. Edward Johnson had a tablet, and that was back in 1945. And then the Duke Drop Inn, and the Duke Drop Inn was right down 124, right Emory Grove Road, right down the street. And they had bands, and all the famous stars that hit DC came out in Emory Grove. So Emory Grove was a place where everyone gathered. It was a small black community, but everyone from DC, Sandy Springs, all around, everyone came to Emory Grove because it was a lot of activities. Even at the campground, Edward Johnson bought that property back in 1947, and he had a ball field with lights, and all the Negro major leagues played out in the park. So Emory Grove was a predominant black, but yet we enjoyed life here in Emory Grove, and everyone just, because not only did we enjoy being in Emory Grove, people enjoyed coming to Emory Grove, and a lot of people who came here never left because of the people and the love for Emory Grove.
I can tell you have very fond memories.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Do you want to add anything to what it looked like when you were growing up?
Well, when Thelma was naming the different crops and fruit trees and gardens, she left out the livestock, the pigs. Mm-hmm. That was like a big family type outing. Everybody sort of raised pigs. Mm-hmm. And all of the families would get together and have a special calling, I guess a whole killing date. And the men would go to each other's houses at one at a time, of course, and get their hugs, butcher them, and take the whatever they'd taken from the pigs back to each home. And the wives would be there to receive it. And they would take whatever they had left from the pig, and they would preserve it or whatever needed to be done and to live off of throughout the winter until the next spring. And so we had a lot of everybody being family. We only had a few places where we could get water, and that was with the relatives of ours that had the wells. They would let us use it. So everybody was really family-like in that.
And may I ask what your parents did for a living? How did they make money?
Domestic work. Most of them were the domestic workers, and that's how they made their money.
And the men, I thought, worked mostly. They had 2 mills in Gaithersburg, and then very few of them worked on farms in neighboring communities like Laytonsville or different areas. They did more or less like farm type work. Mm-hmm. But the men in Emory Grove started off with the mills, and then when Naval Medical Hospital was built, then most of the men then started working there in NIH. Mm-hmm. And between the two of them, and of course the state road company, a lot of men worked for that. So that's basically the skills at that time, long time ago, where the fathers brought in the money, and some of the wives who didn't have a lot of children did domestic work, and the way they could walk, because we didn't have a lot of transportation. I think the only car at the time in the neighborhood was that of the superintendent of schools, Edward Taylor. He was one that had the cars. And we had quite a few that had horse and buggies. That was another form of transportation my grandmother used when I was a child. That's how she, at the early ages of me growing up, would have to travel to get things like flour or sugar that they didn't grow on their land. We grew just about everything we needed except some of the essential ingredients for cooking and oil and stuff like that. But then later on came a few more cars. When any family member moved out and came back in a car, that was just like somebody coming in from Hollywood. I mean, they were the celebrity. We'd all run to meet it and take a ride in it, and I mean, it was we just grew up very happy. We grew up like we really did have everything. We had more than a lot of people had growing up as children, and especially my family. They call us like the rich kids or whatever, because Mama didn't have any. She had a child. My mother, of course, was the only child, but with the money that she was getting from her husband, who had served in the service, and some kind of allotment check that she got after he died, it was quite big enough for her to support us 9 children of her daughters. So we had a very good childhood.
Well, sounds like it. So